Dr. William Small, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good. Great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. So we did some emailing, and we got connected because the lead attorney, shout out to him.
Yes, sir.
He connected us, and I watched some of your videos, and you. So why don't you tell us what it is that you do?
Essentially, what I do is I try to give men information to help them become better men, better husbands, better fathers, and providers. And what I try to do is provide a lot of information in terms of because you cannot separate faith, family, and finances. Those three go together. You know, if you try to take one off, then you're going to have a problem with the other two. All right. So what I try to do is to give them faith-based information and knowledge and also, you know, a little bit of wisdom mixed in to try to give them what they need in order to be able to become better men, better husbands, better fathers, and providers. Okay. Because most people don't realize there's a difference between being a male, being an adult male, and being a man. Yep. Okay. Because a lot of times a lot of guys don't really have the knowledge that they need in order to be a real man. They get stuck in the adult male growth stage and whatnot, which is really called arrested development. And so a lot of times guys just need that little push of knowledge and information to get them over the hump. So that's essentially what I try to do.
Yeah. You know, in our community, the Black community, there's a lot of men that really have not had good relationships with their dad,
right? With
their dads, and I think that exacerbates the problem. You know,
and the other thing is fatherlessness is a problem worldwide. It is the number one problem worldwide. It's not just in America, not just in the Black community. It's a problem worldwide.
It is a problem worldwide. In America, in our community, it's worse than any other community.
Yeah, it's exacerbated.
And
yes,
it's worse. And it seems that anything that the government does, any of their policies, they disproportionately impact us.
Absolutely.
It's always that.
Absolutely.
And I'm a third party guy, and you know I just can't bring myself to vote for two parties that have jointly conspired to situate us where we are right now.
Right.
where we are exactly right now. It's because this called a two-party system, but it's really one party. It's there's a lot of gamesmanship, a lot of tricks, a lot of what is it? What is the game that they trick you with, and you're on the street corner? And they got the 3 cups.
Yeah, 3-card Monte or the shell game.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of that. Because, you know, behind the scenes, you know, in front of the camera, they're, you know, the other one is worse than the devil. You know, they're the second coming of Satan or whatever. You know, they're the worst person on earth. Evil, racist, you know, all of that. But then behind the scenes, they're buddy, you know, they're loaning each other their yacht and stuff. Oh, your daughter's getting married. Oh, hey, take my yacht.
Right.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And so it's quite duplicitous and all about maintaining power.
Right.
I don't see it as primarily a racist enterprise. I see it more as a power and money enterprise, and whatever necessary to acquire that, that's what they're going to do.
But see, here's the thing, okay? Power and money is the foundation of racism. See, people think that it has something to do with skin color, but it does not, okay? Indirectly, it does, because what racism is, the foundation of racism is capitalism, okay? And both of those words end with ism for a reason, okay? Ism is a belief system. So capitalism is the belief that certain groups or certain people should always be on top. The word capital means the top. Okay, so capitalism is a belief system. It's almost like a form of religion, okay? Just like Buddhism, Catholicism, Judaism. It's like a type of religion that they adhere to, they do not detract from, because they believe in it like it's type of religion. So capitalism is the belief that certain groups of people should always be on top, okay? But in order for certain groups of people to always be on top, you need to have another system to ensure certain groups of people will always be on the bottom. Racism is the system that is designed to keep certain groups of people on the bottom, okay? And so essentially what they're trying to do is deprive you economically and positionally from getting the source of power, which is primarily money and people, okay? Now, where we end up with a problem is we find ourselves diluted or divided on a lot of issues, okay, in a lot of positions. And so you might have women that's, for a certain issue that men are against. You might have men that's for a certain issue that women are against. You might have young people. You might have old people on the opposite sides of different issues. So we find ourselves divided on so many different issues, which keeps us from being powerful, okay? Because politicians only respect two things, okay? Large amounts of money and large groups of people, okay? And they don't even respect those two if the people aren't organized and the money's not pooled. And so where we have messed up, well, the only place that we haven't really messed up, and we're actually getting ready to get there, is being divided in terms of our voting power. Okay, and because the system has been so messed up, like you just described, between the Republicans and the Democrats, those two-party system, and you really can't tell them apart other than the rhetoric that they speak. Okay, right. So now you have a lot of people advocating, well, we should split up our vote and give part of our votes to the Republicans and part of our votes to Democrats so that we can have one foot in either game. Okay, but the only problem is straddling the fence like that. If you fall, something in the middle is going to get hurt. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that both of them are the devil. Okay, and we have to pick one devil to dance with.
All right. So this is okay. So this is interesting. You said a couple things. I want to digress a little bit. You're talking about capitalism. Mm-hmm. So if capitalism is not the way, if that is what is causing or facilitating racism, what is the system that we should have in place?
The system that we should have in place as a people. Yeah. First of all, it starts with the individual, okay? Every man has to secure his own kingdom, okay? So, and a kingdom has to be financed, okay? A kingdom has to have constituents, it has to have citizens, and there has to be some financial, there has to be money, okay? There has to be a financial system in order to support that kingdom, in order to provide a necessary defense for that kingdom, okay? So the first thing each individual man must do is secure his own bag, Now, we found out from COVID that it's not a secure position to rely on employee compensation, to rely on a paycheck to feed your family, because that could go away. And we're seeing the systems being put in place now where companies need to use less and less people. So each individual man has to find a way to provide for his individual family independent of an employer. And so once we do that, then we need to find a way to be able to circulate our money within our community so that we don't have to depend on outside resources too much. You see what I'm saying? And that way,
I do see what you're saying. Now, and I'm sure you know this, the term capitalism, that term was actually not invented by the proponents of capitalism, of what's referred to as capitalism. That was actually, what was it, Karl Marx, that coined that term, capitalism. I'm more of a free market guy. And although I do think that there have been some problems with capitalism, especially the crony capitalism variety, where it's not a true free market,
right?
Because they stack the rules so that their cronies can get over.
Certain people or certain groups must always be at the top. Okay, that's crony capitalism. Okay,
so it sounds to me that although I try to resist using the term capitalism because I realize the source of that word, that it was a term, and when it was coined, it was pejorative. It was it wasn't seen as a positive term. I mean, he coined that term. He's not a free market guy. Karl Marx is not. He's
right.
He's a communist, socialist. So anything that allows the individual to prosper, regardless as to if the society is prospering, he was not going to be a fan of. Obviously, we can look at positive aspects of the free market system, but as you said, the crony capitalism, that seems to be where a lot of problems sort of get in.
Exactly. Now, if you remember Tulsa, and Black Wall Street, that was the closest thing that we've seen to a free market system in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so what I'm trying to get to is to try to get every man to be able to build up his own individual economy, for his family, and then parlay that into building a viable economy for the Black community in every major city across the country. Okay, then we can begin to share goods and services. We can have our own free market system, begin to share goods and services within our own communities rather than having to go out, because there's nothing that any other community can do that we can't do better. Okay, and it's been proven time and time again that we always do better. There was a system, or there was a term that was created right after post-slavery, and it was called nigger rig. All right. And basically, Black people could take anything that was made, a lawnmower, vacuum cleaner, whatever, and rig it and make it perform better than what it was when it was first created. And we have always had that ability to make things better than what was originally created. And that's a gift that is inherent in us as a group of people. So we don't really have to depend on anybody else for goods and services if we begin to operate as a single unit, as a solid community.
Yeah, slavery definitely got the ball rolling as far as how things are for our community. It definitely got the ball rolling, but in many respects, we had sort of overcome those challenges prior to the civil rights movement, where a high percentage of us were married. It was 85% or something.
Yes.
And very much lower out of wedlock birth rate. What is it? It was like under 15%, under 12% or something. It was very low. Now, even in those days, it was higher than it was for, say, white folks.
Yeah.
But it was still way lower than it is now.
And what was the term that they used to describe out of wedlock birth back in those days? What did they say? You were what? In trouble. Remember that?
You're in trouble?
Yeah, they used to say when a woman got pregnant out of wedlock, they used to say that she was in trouble. Okay?
Oh, right.
And then what they would do, if she lived in the north, they would send her to the south to have the baby, right? And then when she come back, that baby was her sister.
Right. Yep.
You know?
Right. Because they're, look, the way I think about this is, I'm a Christian, and that totally it colors the way that I view everything, and that is my bias. I find it to be the most consistent worldview,
absolutely,
the one that makes the most sense. Okay, now, having said that, there's a lot of pushback, against the Christian thing. The world has become far more secular. America has become far more secular, and things have gotten worse and worse. I think, in large part, due to that. At one point, you would just like folks to admit that, you know what, yeah, we can do what we want to do, but you know what, if we had done it the way the book said, it would be a lot better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just admit it. Just say it out loud. I know, you don't want to admit it, but just say it.
I mean, if you look at what's going on right now, okay, within the Republican Party, there is a war going on within that party, okay, because you got a certain amount of people within that party that just don't want to follow any rules whatsoever. They don't want anybody to tell them to do. They're like recalcitrant 5-year-olds, okay? They want freedom above all. It doesn't matter if 600,000 people had to die or whatever. We're not going to do what you tell us to do. If you mandate a mask, we're going to shoot things and, all of this kind of stuff, And it's getting to the point where nobody is going to want to follow any kind of order, any kind of rules and whatnot, And the thing about Christianity is it sets up an established order, okay? There is established rules that you have to follow in order to be able to prosper in life as a human being, because it's just an illusion that we are human beings, okay? We are actually spiritual beings having a human experience. If our spirit was to leave our body right now, we just be reduced to a bag of meat and bones, because it's the spirit that is animating our body. And so in order to effectively navigate this life, having this human experience, it has to be built on a spiritual foundation. Okay, and that spiritual foundation has rules, it has orders, it has a structure in order to be able to function properly. Just like a toaster. Okay, if you misuse a toaster, okay, it could hurt you. It could blow up, set your house on fire. But if you follow the rules and use that toaster properly, you're going to get a benefit from that appliance. And people don't understand, if you follow the rules of Christianity properly, you're going to get a benefit that is going to prosper or effectuate the way that you want to actually live your life.
Yes. But before, but as I was saying, I mean, we had pretty much overcome most of the challenges in our community that were caused by slavery. And then the civil rights movement. And yeah, there were some positive things about that movement. But the forced integration component, that's the part where you take communities that had established their own way of doing things, Black folks trusting each other, having to go to each other, support each other, having to go to each other to buy food, to acquire services and whatnot. So now we have been dispersed all around.
Mm-hmm.
And now see, the integration thing is interesting because the term suggests that, I mean, if it was done fairly, white folks would have been moving into Black neighborhoods too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Which they are now. That's called gentrification. But go ahead.
Right. But that's not what they did, right? What did they do? They made us go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so then that basically reduces our strength in the community. So then we kind of stop trusting each other. If we're really going to get something done right, you got to find the white. White is right. You got to find the white version. All of that stuff began there. And then, of course, the state incentivizing women to have kids without the father involved,
mm-hmm.
so that they can, get a check. And actually, there's a TikTok video. There's actually a white lady. And she was breaking it down, and she was talking about how I think she's got like 5 or 6 baby daddies. And she's like, well, why would you have a bunch of kids by the same baby daddy? He says, you can't make as much money that way.
That's right.
So if you have multiple baby daddies, you get a higher percentage.
That's right.
Check. So it incentivizes not just to have kids out of wedlock, but to have multiple baby daddies.
I know this woman that has 5 kids, okay? All of her kids are by either firefighters or police officers, okay? And in this city, firefighters and police officers are some of the highest paid people in that city, okay? They get paid upwards to the top 10% of wage earners in the country, okay? So these guys are making bank. This woman had five babies from 5 different men, police officers and firefighters. And in New York State, where these people live, the child support is 17% of a man's income. Okay, so she's getting 17% of 5 men's income. Okay, and every time they work overtime, she gets 17% of that too. All right, and this lady is driving around in a Range Rover. She have a $500,000 house. She don't work nowhere, and basically she used her body as an ATM machine.
The institution that you would expect to be speaking up on these kinds of issues is the Black church.
Yeah.
And although I have pastor friends that talk on these topics to their congregations, but they are clearly the minority.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the last time that I heard a sermon where they were actually getting into a lot of the sort of mate selection issues that in general Black women exhibit. Let's just be honest. I'm not talking about all Black women.
Right.
I'll have that when I married my wife, and she still is, fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, submissive, and she had no kids before we got married. And we've been married for 13 years. We have an 8-year-old. Okay? So good women are out there, but they're so badly outnumbered by these women that make these really terrible decisions, most of which I think have been incentivized by this very thing that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And the reason why you don't hear pastors talking about it is because they are incentivized not to talk about it. Because if you can seduce a woman or con her into tithing, okay, if she is getting $170,000 a year from her 5 baby daddies, he gets 10% of that. And so
that is a good point, man. I have to admit, that is not an angle that I had thought of.
You know, and so a lot of times you will find that churches, 75% of the people that occupy the pews every Sunday are either divorced or unmarried. And there's a reason why that is happening. Whenever a strong man comes into the church, the pastor's standing up in the pulpit, okay, and he can see 1, 2, maybe 3 strong men coming to church, okay, and he cannot have those guys roaming around in that church having access to his women, you see, because those are his women, you know. So what he'll do periodically, he'll say something like, you better watch out for the men in this church. Some people coming here for the wrong reason, you know, and then sometime they'll try to make it seem like they being balanced or whatever. You better watch out for some of these women. They coming here for the wrong reason. Now, if a guy saw a young lady in the church that he wanted to ask out for lunch or for coffee or something like that after service, he can't do it because now she's going to look at him suspiciously. You see what I'm saying? And so what happens is you have a system that is set up where the pastors, he deliberately tries to keep the women single, and then he sets up a scenario where they have these women's groups where they actively try to work to keep each other single. I know this one woman, she was in this church group with single women, and she got a boyfriend, okay? And the other women kicked her out of the group because she had a boyfriend. You know, now this woman got a man, and they had got engaged. Now these were older people, so they wasn't playing around. They had got engaged, and they were, you know, talking about getting married and all of that. And these other women got jealous of her and said, "No, you can't be part of our group anymore because you got a man." You know, so they've been mentally conditioned using spiritual manipulation in order to remain single and to keep each other single.
So last night, and last night I mean Sunday, and what's today? I think today's the 20th, so I think Sunday was the 19th. Kevin Samuels had he doesn't usually broadcast on Sundays, but he did a Sunday evening show, and that show was about, you know, the changes he believes that the black church needs to make in order to get black men back in the church. Mm-hmm. And he made a lot of points that I thought, I mean, his point, I actually can't, I don't have a criticism of the points that he made. One of the point that he made in particular is that the pastors have to begin to share power.
Right.
They have to start sharing power with the other men that are in the church. That's one thing that has to happen. Another thing is that the church needs to start financing, you know, at a comparable level, maybe not exact, but they need to finance well, not just music, not just the pastor's salary, not just those kinds of things, not just the women's ministry, but they need to start financing men's ministry and, in particular, singles ministry.
Yes.
And because so here's one of the issues, and they have to start, and the pastor has to start preaching from the book. All of the inconvenient stuff that it says in there, they need to start preaching the whole thing. And the thing is that I think people know now that dating doesn't work. Dating is an utter failure. It does not work. All it does is rack up your body count. That's all it does. And then by the time you meet somebody that's worth something, you have so destroyed yourself that you don't have much good left. You don't trust people. You can't trust people. You can't work together. You have all of these skeletons in your closet by which to compare. And it was never the meaning of this thing. The monogamy. Okay, so I watch CGA frequently. He's a funny dude.
What is that?
I met him at CGA, Coach Greg Adams.
Okay.
And CGA, I met him actually at the CME, the Conference of Masculine Excellence. It was Donovan Sharp's conference. And I've been to a lot of men's events, Christian events, church events. I'm just gonna state facts. That was the best men's conference I've ever been to, by far. And it's a shame. It's a shame that kind of event couldn't take place in a church, because much of what was said by the presenters were Christian principles.
Yeah.
It was just good information. And it's like, how come churches are not doing this?
Because it's not in their economic best interest. Okay. It's not in their economic best interest. When you think about it, pastors make more money, okay, when there's more ewes than rams. Okay. And so whenever the rams show up in the church, they have to do two things. Because when you look at a regular sheep herd, okay, it's comprised predominantly of ewes and lambs. All right. And when you look at the church, what is it comprised of? Predominantly ewes and lambs. All right. And so when you look at the sheep herd, the shepherd does not need very many rams in order to keep that sheepfold growing. All right. So what he usually does is, when a ram is born, what he usually does is either castrate a few of them and then kill the rest, because he castrate them in order to use them to help defend the herd against predators. Okay. And so now they can't actually partake in, the use of the females and whatnot, because they've been castrated. Now, they're aggressive and they hyper and whatnot. And a wolf come, hey, they're all out. Okay. But the point is that there's only one intact ram that is authorized to operate in the church. Okay. The rest of them are used. They're eunuchs. Okay. They've been castrated. In order to be able to sit under, the pastor, you have to emasculate yourself in order to be able to follow this man. Okay. You cannot be a man in that situation, because if you need to do, or you want to do anything in that church, you got to get permission from daddy. You see what I'm saying? And so the thing is that when you go into those spaces as a man, you can't be a man. You get either reduced to a boy or half a female. All right. And if you look at a lot of the guys that's in church, a lot of them are kind of half a female, because they're trying to get the attention of the pastor, just like the women are. You know, they want to get noticed. They want to get their name mentioned and all of this kind of stuff, you know. And this is where this little spiritual son thing came from, you know. In order to be the spiritual son of a pastor, you have to be his disciple, which means essentially you have to do everything that he tells you to do, which means opening up your wallet whenever he asks you to. You know, and this is the reason why you find a lot of associate or assistant pastors in the church, okay, who have on their little black robe with the white collar and all, you know, black suit with the white collar and all of that kind of stuff, but they ain't gonna get to preach no time soon, you know. But it keeps them on the side, giving them the false hope that one day, you know, they're gonna get to preach or whatever. But in the meantime, he uses them to do different work in the church and pay loyalty fees, you know, to him and his family. So when he has a birthday, they expect to open up their wallet. When the first lady has a birthday, they expect to open up their wallet, you know, all of this kind of stuff. So, you know, it's not a good place for men as it is right now.
Yeah, it's too bad that things have gotten that sort of out of balance. Now, I'm Orthodox, and that's a different paradigm. It's you know, I'd say the liturgical churches. So the liturgical churches would be like the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, but in particular, the Orthodox Church are the last they're the last churches, and I'm specifically talking about the Orthodox Church, the last church that has maintained specific roles for both men and women, and that haven't sort of bent the knee to certain progressive movements. And, you know, let's talk about the Catholic Church. A Catholic priest has to take a vow of poverty. So what is going to be the incentive for you to become a priest? if you try, I mean, it can't be because you're trying to get rich. It got to be for some other reason. Now, you can criticize aspects of the Catholic Church. That's fine. And I get that. My point here is that there are other ways to do this. And there are some good, long-lasting models for how we can structure things to protect our churches from some of this kind of stuff. Now, I will also say that, as I said before, I know some black pastors that are not engaging in that, trying to emasculate the men around them, that whole thing. And I know some men that are really involved in building men up, and see their primary purpose is ministering to men. So I know pastors that are like that. I know they exist, you know, and I know folks like Geno Jennings who will tell you the truth.
And dare you to do something about it.
Right. So there are folks out here that are like that. It's just they're not getting the press.
Right. Now, let me tell you this, okay? My PhD is in biblical studies, okay? I have been around the world. I've circled the globe twice, all right? In every place that I've been, I've gotten involved in the community. I've gotten involved in the churches. And generally what happens is people recognize that I have the ability to teach, that I know the Bible backwards and forward, all right? And essentially what generally happens is I get elected or selected by pastors to, you know, teach the men. Okay. So I have written a lot of sermons for a lot of pastors and whatnot, on subjects, related to men, relationships, marriage, family, and all that. The majority of my friends are actually pastors. All right. So what you're saying is that it's true. There are a lot of good guys out here, that don't try to quote unquote fleece the flock or try to manipulate the situation. But basically, their congregations are small.
Yeah. That's that. Yeah. Yeah. Now this is something I've thought about this often. Mega churches, that is not the that's not the model presented by the Bible. Mega churches is not a early church conception. That's not what they thought. they was talking about when they were talking about the church. And anytime, and Kevin made this point. He said, anytime, these churches, once they grow beyond the place where fellowship becomes difficult, it's too big. I mean, if the pastor can't actually have a real relationship with their congregants, it's too big. And then what ends up happening is it makes it the focus starts to change. It's less about that sort of personal looking out for individuals, knowing them by name and knowing their situations and praying with them about their situations. And I'm not trying to different churches do things differently. But if the reason that you have a prayer team is because the pastor couldn't possibly pray for all of the people, that might be also a sign that the church is too big. Mm-hmm. If you're looking out in an auditorium, say if it's 5,000, 7,000, just some huge auditorium, even if it is 3/4 full, human nature will look at the empty seats and say, what could I have done to get those seats filled? Mm-hmm. And if we think that because a person is called to be a pastor, called to be a preacher, that they are not, that they all of a sudden become not human or superhuman or something, that is just not how it works. I mean, I'm a musician. That's been my discipline. My doctorate is in music. And I've performed all my life, starting when I was really young. And so I can identify and understand that when you play in a space and there's empty seats, that there is a psychological thing that happens. Mm-hmm. Rather than playing at a venue that is right-sized for your audience. Right. So when you play in a right-sized venue, even if it's just 50 people, that is going to be a much better experience than playing for a 300-seater and having 75 people show up.
Exactly. Now, let me tell you this, okay? I'm the type of guy who has never had only one job, okay? I've actually been working since I was 10, working full-time since I was 12, and I've never only had one job. So when I was in the military, I spent 20 years in the Army, okay? I didn't just do that job. I had other jobs that I was doing at the same time. Often I had 2 or 3 jobs at one time, right? When I was 17 years old, I started producing dances And from there, I started producing concerts. All right. And so whenever I promoted a concert, what I would do is I would find a group that fit the size of the venue that I was going to put them in. Because what happens is a lot of times musicians, they don't like to play in venues with empty seats, you know? And so basically what I would do is I would set what I call a drop dead date. If I couldn't fill up that venue at least 3/4 of the way, because I know that there's always going to be walk up on the day of the event. Okay, so if I couldn't fill up at least 3/4 of that event by a certain date, I would go ahead and cancel that show. Okay, because it wouldn't be profitable for me, and it wouldn't be a pleasurable experience for that performer, and plus then I would get a bad reputation of not being able to fill up a venue.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so I fully understand where you're going with that, you know. And essentially, just like what you're saying is when you trying to fill up a venue and you see you got empty seats, or you have an act that can't fill those seats, you start to think about, okay, who can I bring that will fill these seats? Okay, or what can I do to fill these seats? You see what I'm saying?
And that is not the mission of the church.
Right.
That ain't the mission of the church to fill the seats. That is it's so far away from what this thing actually should be about.
Now let me tell you this, okay?
Go ahead.
We have a dichotomy that exists here, okay? The banjo that I play is the Bible, okay? The saxophone that I blow is the Bible, okay? The drums that I beat is the Bible, all right? My doctoral dissertation, the title of it was The Church's Foundation Message. I was told when I was a kid, okay, when I begged my mother to get baptized when I was 5 years old because I wanted to be a preacher. She used to drag us to church. You know, I didn't get on drugs because my mother drugged me to church. All right. So, I would sit there and watch the preacher perform and whatnot. And I got to the place where I could almost memorize the sermon. You know, and so what I would do is after the sermon, I would re-perform what the pastor did for my mother and her friends. And they were like, yeah, you know, look at my baby. He's going to be a preacher, all of this kind of stuff. OK. And so I had begged her to get baptized because I wanted to be a preacher, because in my little mind, I thought that you had to be baptized in order to be a preacher. All right. So I've been going to church all my life. Okay, I've been studying the Bible all my life. Even as a boy, I liked to read the Bible because I was all boy. I was all natural. Okay, and I liked the little stories of war, David, and all of that kind of stuff that was in the Bible, and that stuff was intriguing to me. And so as I got older, I began to not only read the Bible, but then to study it. And once I began to study the Bible, I began to see the Bible in a whole different light than the average person. When I was a kid, I was told that there was this scarlet thread that ran through the Bible, and nobody could ever tell you what this scarlet thread was. Okay, but what I did is I discovered what that scarlet thread is. Okay, and that scarlet thread is the blood of Jesus. It runs from Genesis all the way through Revelation. Okay, and the one message, the one critical message throughout the whole Bible that resonates throughout the whole Bible is that one message that Jesus preached everywhere he went. Now, Jesus taught a lot of things, but he only preached one thing, and that was repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. Okay. And that message resonates throughout the Bible. Now, when you look at what Jesus taught, okay, he did not teach church formation. You won't find any words of Jesus that is exhorting people, even no words of Paul that exhorts people to set up an institution like we call church today, with all of these different buildings and all of this kind of stuff. And even when his disciples tried to point out the glory of the various buildings that the Jews had set up, Jesus told them, listen, there's not going to be one stone left standing on any of those buildings. Okay. So essentially he was telling them, don't try to duplicate what you see there. All right. And then when they were, jockeying for leadership and stuff like that, he said, listen, don't do that. He said, people who want to abuse people, they try to get into positions of authority where they can rule over people and whatnot. I don't want you to do that. All right. And so you won't see Jesus or even God advocating that we set up a system of churches like we have now. All right. And if you look at the word congregation in the Bible, one of the things that I try to do is get men to understand or to motivate them to do is to begin to do word studies, because you can never really understand what God was trying to say if you try to look at those words on the surface, because they were translated from another language, either Aramaic, Hebrew, or Greek. Okay, so you have to look at the original words and see why they were translated into that English word. And so when you look at the word congregation in the Bible, that word is never used in a positive context. In Proverbs 5:14, God said, I was almost in the midst of evil in the congregation. Okay. And when you look at the word congregate, all right, in most cities, there is a law against people just congregating without license. You can't have a parade without license and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. In some places, it's codified as loitering. Okay. Congregating or loitering is a group of people sitting around or standing around, ain't doing nothing. And so when you look at a lot of congregations, it's a group of people who come together every Sunday in a place, okay, and they really ain't going to do nothing. When they leave there, they're going to go back to their little private homes, their little private spaces and all that. And at the end of the day, they're really not going to do anything. They get pacified or feel placated because they went and had listened to this religious service, thinking that's going to give them a check mark on God's credit card or whatever, or God's scorecard, but at the end of the day, they're really not going to do anything. So what we have to do, or what I try to do, is I try to activate the Bible in people's lives so that they can begin to see, number one, that the Bible is a book of wisdom. The Bible is a guide for our lives, and anything that we need to do or want to do, or any trouble that we can get ourselves into, the answer is right there in that book.
Well said. So you talk about family, relationships, and one thing that I notice about aspects of the manosphere, of course, it's not a monolithic space. There's all kinds of different things that are happening in that space, and it's not a Christian space,
right?
So expecting people to behave as though they are Christian is not they're exempt because that's not a standard that they espouse,
right?
But many of them do, actually. There's folks like the Roommates. And Kevin Samuels, he's Christian. He claims to be Christian. He said he was baptized at 5, and he's actually led a few different singles ministries at some big churches and things. He even said on Sunday that at one point he felt that he might be called to ministry, and he was happy to discover that he was not later on, because that's a hard pill. It's a hard pill.
Let me just interject this real quick, okay?
Sure.
Nobody should ever follow a pastor who says that he was called to ministry, that he was called to be a pastor, okay? So now, the test is, yeah, you might have been called, okay? And they can tell you this story, this all flowery story, almost make you want to cry, telling you the story about the day that they was called, okay? But what does Hebrews 10 say? How shall they preach unless they be sent? Okay, now you tell me about the day you was called, but tell me now about the day you was sent. And they start sounding like Ralph Cramden, amina. Okay. Jesus said, many are called, but few are chosen.
Or few are chosen. That's right.
Okay. So he said that how shall they preach unless they be what? Sent. Okay. So I don't want to hear about you was called. Okay. That tells me that you got on the list. I want to know about the day you were sent. That tells me the day that you were selected or elected, okay, to lead God's people.
Right. But, the space is it's not a Christian space, but there are many values that are espoused that are Christian values. Mm-hmm. And I will say that if the Black church had been assertive and aggressive about addressing many of the issues that get addressed in the manosphere, they wouldn't need to address those issues. The reason that they're addressing them, and rightly, wrongly, some of the solutions to problems maybe aren't the best solution, but the reason that they're having to provide solutions is because the church hasn't done that. But
Doc, when you think about what's happening in the manosphere, okay, can you absolutely say that they're providing solutions? Now, they're really good. They're excellent at pointing out the problems. Okay, you got a lot of the red pill content where women ain't this and women ain't that, and you got the talk about women being hypergamous and all of this kind of stuff. Okay, but nobody is really talking about providing an adequate solution that is going to solve the problem. See, a lot of these guys, they're running a business. All right, and in order to have a viable business, you need repeat customers. Now, if you solve these guys' problem, okay, they will have no need to sit there and watch hours and hours and hours of your content. You see? So I see.
So let me say this. I would agree that there are all kinds in the space, and there are some that it's just a business. Mm-hmm. And they're just, they're providing a service and you need return customers. So I see that. But then there are a lot of content creators that's not what they're doing. And they are actually providing solutions. There's a level up community that focuses on stuff like saving your money, mm-hmm. investing, making better choices as far as mate selection, advancing in your career, getting your body right, getting in shape, mm-hmm. So all of that kind of stuff is there. And also I think the space initially existed because men had been sort of expelled from other aspects of society with respect to what they were allowed to talk about. Mm-hmm. It used to be, for Black men, it used to be that, there were a couple places where you always could go and you could talk candidly, frankly, and you didn't have to worry about getting canceled. You didn't have to worry about people, taking it the wrong way and stuff like that. It was the barbershop and it was the church. Yep. But those are not really viable locations anymore. The barbershop tends to be connected to the beauty salon now. Mm-hmm. And the church has made its choice as far as what kinds of messaging it's going to promote and which kind of messaging it's not going to promote. And I think that has been severely at the detriment of the men. And so the men say, hey, well, this ain't for us. So they go somewhere else. And what are they supposed to do? So I would say that initially the space arose because it was fulfilling a need. And that was a need to be able to voice issues, to be able to have conversations with folks that had similar experiences. I know that when I was, I have a, I have a playlist on my, and it's a series of videos on my YouTube channel called Blue Pill Testimonials. And there's 10 videos in there, although only one of them you can see. The other 9 you have to be a member of the channel to see. And it's basically where I'm just expressing many mistakes that I've made, and my challenges have been primarily with women. Yeah, that's just a fact. I mean, money and women are the things that will hem guys up. And I remember when I was going through a lot of that stuff, I had the distinct feeling as though I was the only one that was having that kind of experience. And it's alienating, isolating, and then also, the tendency to sort of repeat mistakes. If when you try to talk to other folks, they gaslight you as if what it is that you're saying, isn't real, or you just are the only one that are having that kind of experience, knowing good and well they had the same kind of experiences. They just won't tell you.
Won't admit it, right.
So I think that the space aspects of it serve that purpose. But just like anything, I agree. I see certain folks that are in the space that definitely are predators, and you have to look out for them.
Right.
The folks that I tend to check out, listen to, collaborate with are folks that are positive. Folks like Ike Ogiamian. I've got a show with him on his channel on Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to have that show tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And that content, the show's called Getting Ish Done. So it's a productivity show. And he's a Christian also, and he's married. So there are folks that are in the space that are trying to do positive things. I see it as the same as any other place. I work at a university. There's just as much foolishness and evil going on there as anywhere else.
Right.
And so it's just another part of the world. It just happens to be online.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And the thing is I have a YouTube channel, and I watch some content from some, certain people and whatnot. So I don't get to watch a whole breadth, of content from a bunch of different guys, so.
Right.
Some of the things that I have seen, just kind of concern me a little bit. And that's the reason why I had that perspective, that point of view. But I'm glad to hear that there are people that are out there, trying to do positive things, and trying to help people get things done, But really, that's what I try to do.
But what are some of your criticisms? What of the stuff that you've seen? Tell me some of your criticisms, and if you don't believe that a solution is being provided, what solution would you provide?
Okay. The main criticism that I have is from the channels that I have watched in the manosphere. A lot of the red pill stuff, to me, that is counterproductive. So I don't see many solutions being provided, by the guys in the red pill sector. I see a lot of problems being pointed out, various issues, but no real solutions being provided except for, don't do this certain thing. You don't let women do this and all of that kind of stuff, but that doesn't really get a young man who is looking to have a a good relationship with a woman, the love of a good woman, the respect of a good woman, that doesn't really get him what he wants, you know? And so somebody has to, and what I try to do is to provide them the information that would make them become the type of man that a woman would want and that a woman wouldn't leave, you know? And so when a woman sees that a man is a man, they tend not to leave that guy. They tend not to, what the guys call in the red pill sector, they tend not to shit test the guy, you know, because they know that they're dealing with a real man, and they will try to do everything that they can to hold on to that guy because they know that he is, you know, the example of a real man. So somebody have to teach these guys who like to view the content in the red pill sector what they need to do in order to be able to resolve those problems that they have with women, rather than continue to regurgitate the problems over and over. All right, I got a call from a woman tonight right before I clicked on, where a friend of hers son was experiencing depression because his girlfriend had left him, you know, and his mother,
I've been there,
you know, was afraid that he might do something to himself, you know, but she had traveled to another city on business or whatever, and the boy was home with his father, you know, but she was trying to figure out whether she should rush home and try to, you know, do whatever she can to keep him from what she suspected he might do. And my answer was, why don't you have faith in your husband? Okay, he's 17, you know, a boy needs his father, you know, so why don't you why is it you think that you have to rush to try to do something when his father is right there with him, you know? And so a lot of times we have these issues that occur in our family, and, you know, when you don't know what to do, every situation becomes an emergency, you know? And so I've seen a lot of guys, you know, encounter situations like in Houston, for example. Hurricanes hit that city just about every year. All right. And you know, they'll have flooding because it's only 50 feet above sea level. And you will see reports every year of men being in shelters with their families saying that they don't have the money to do this or to do that or whatever. And I'm saying, this is a city that is 50 feet above sea level. You have these occurrences every year, just about. Why are you not prepared to handle this situation? Why is this situation an emergency? Why are you not prepared for this already?
Yeah.
You know? And so that's where, you know, a community of men need to come together and say, hey, you know, we got to get ready for this stuff. You know, you kind of missing out, Jim or John, if you're not ready, you know. And a lot of times, like you said, we used to have these conversations in the barbershop, but now what's happening is you got so many single women with sons, they want to bring their son to the barbershop, okay? And they want to sit around and wait while the boy gets his hair cut, and now men can't talk the way they normally talk because this woman is in the room. If I owned a barbershop, the rule would be you drop off your son and we take care of your son. And when he's ready, I'll text you or call you, you come pick him up, okay? Because in the beauty shop, you don't see men sitting around waiting for their daughters to get their hair done. And women can talk all of the talk they want to talk about men, you know, that they want to talk because that is their private space. Men can't have that now.
Yeah, see, this is, yeah. But what you're saying right now is a primary reason for the you know, the manosphere, the black manosphere, the red pill spaces, the MGTOW spaces, the black pill spaces, all of that stuff. So I think maybe understanding some terms would be helpful, because when you say red pill, all of that stuff that I just said is considered red pill.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that analogy from the Matrix movie. It's just about acknowledging reality. The red pill is where you acknowledge what reality is, and you go down the rabbit hole and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And the blue pill is you just, you remain deluded. And so all of that stuff is part of those is part of all of those spaces. I think in particular, what you are referring to that's distasteful, and I have an issue with it too, because I think that there's a better way to deal with it. It's red pill rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times what happens is people, they become aware of what's going on, and they get really angry, and they stay angry for a long time.
Yes.
And they're spouting all kinds of stuff. They're just angry, and they're just they're hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, say you go through, a lot of guys will say, they got their sort of red pill awakening via divorce and child custody battles. CGA, he talks about how when he got divorced, he's living out of his car, and spouse is fighting him, custody, for his kids and stuff, and all this kind of stuff. You go from, you're spending all of your time building your home, your house. All your resources are going to your house. All your resources are going to your family. And then you wake up one day and surprise, you're being served. And then you discover really how sort of slanted things can become, and can be. So there's a lot of guys that are stuck in that. Now, in my mind, a way out of that, the way out of that is, I think it's the church, but not the way, not aspects of the church that we have criticized, but it's the central figure that the church promotes, and that's Jesus. That's what I think. Right?
Yeah, and I think the same thing, but I don't frame it as the church. I frame the solution is in the Bible. The solution is in the Word of God. Okay, because
now I'm going to ask you about this, because where did the Bible come from?
Okay, now. Okay. The Bible looks like it's a book, okay? It looks like a piece of literary work, all right? But it's not, okay? Those words that you see in the Bible are actually numbers. Each one of those words has a numerical value, okay? And if you want to get to the truth of those words that are written on the surface, first of all, you have to convert them back into the language where they originally came from, either Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic, all right? And then you have to understand the numerical value of each word, and then translate them back into their numerical value in order to be able to ascertain the truth, because there were some aspects of the Bible that were changed to fit a certain agenda. Okay, for example, in I think it was, I don't forgot the exact year, but the Catholic Church had the Bible translated into Latin so that the average person couldn't read it. All right. And they figured that, it was unseemly for everybody to be able to read the Bible. So what happens is years later, it was translated back into English around 1600. And when it was translated back into English, there's always a barrier in English in translations. Okay, like Japanese, for example, cannot be translated perfectly into English. The only language that can be translated the most perfect is the Greek language into many different languages around the world. But the thing is that the Bible is a mathematical code, and the reason why it's like that is because it actually contains the history of Black people. Now, the reason why it was written in a code like that is because the people who wrote this thing, they understood that civilizations fall, okay, have fallen throughout history. Everybody goes through a period where they get conquered. They wrote this book in this way so that first of all, the power of it could be understood on the surface, but the truth is actually hidden beyond the surface. All right, but they wanted the power to be able to be recognized by people who seek power, so that whoever got this book that had the history of Black people in it would not destroy it. All right. And then they left markers for people to be able to translate this book back into the truth by essentially basically leaving the formula where it could be found.
Okay, so let me ask you a more specific question. Where did the New Testament come from?
If you believe the Bible, okay, it was inspired by God.
Okay, no, that's not what I'm asking. I agree with that. By the way, so in 325 A.D., the New Testament canon was ratified. And it was ratified by the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Now, that doesn't mean the Roman Catholic Church. It meant the one church, which was the 5 patriarchates of the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the one patriarchate, the Roman Catholic Church. They were all one. The one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. If you read the Nicene Creed, for instance, which is the statement that undergirds in all forms of Christianity. I mean, it lays out what the basic doctrines are. It mentions this one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. It's talking about the one church, the church established by the apostles. The one, so that was the body that the Bible was ratified. And that's important, and it's very significant because they did not canonize a New Testament until 325 AD because they didn't think it was necessary. They had no desire, no need to do it. They did it because there were circulating erroneous documents that were claiming apostolic authorship.
The Gnostics.
Like, right. So they said, okay, we have to, we need to ratify something. We need to say this is what our canon is. And they used the process of, when in doubt, throw it out.
Right. So that's how we get the apocryphas and all of that.
No, that's actually that's earlier, because what's referred to as being the apocrypha, and that's not the term used by. So deuterocanonical is another term. Apocrypha is usually that's like the Protestant a term for the collection of writings, but deuterocanonical is not even. That's not even the term. The term is just the Bible.
Right.
And this is how we know this. When Paul says all Scripture is profitable for teaching, like that, when he says all Scripture, he's talking about the text that the Jews recognized as being the Old Testament. Their Bible. That's what he was talking about. All Scripture. The New Testament didn't exist yet.
Right.
So he's talking about all Scripture. That's the Jewish canon. The Jewish canon, although it was written in Hebrew, King Ptolemy hired 70 translators to translate the Hebrew to Greek. And when he did that, he didn't allow the translators to interact.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know who each other were, and they didn't interact. And it was seen as a minor miracle or major miracle that there was no disagreement in the translations. So all of the translations agreed. That document is called the Septuagint.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened after the rise of Christianity, what happened was there was a Council of Jamnia, which was a Jewish council. And in that council, the Jews were trying to create separation between them and the Christian communities. And the Christian communities, since the document was all in Greek, it made it so that a wider array of folks could understand that language. And they said, hey, we need to do something about this. And so they said, and the early Christian liturgy was but a Christianization of the Jewish liturgy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very similar. And so they said, okay, we want some separation. So they said, okay, we're going to go back to the Hebrew. Okay. Now, when they went back to the Hebrew, they threw out the deuterocanonical.
Mm-hmm.
They threw those books out. So like Maccabees, Tobit, the Book of Wisdom, all of that stuff, they threw that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And now part of the reason that we know that this is the case is because there's Jewish communities in Africa that didn't get the correspondence that they were supposed to go back to the Hebrew, and they still use the Septuagint.
Yeah.
Which has those other books in it. So what I'm saying is Paul knew the document. He was referring to the Septuagint. That was the document that they recognized as being the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was their canon. It wasn't called Old Testament. That was their canon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a different issue. The issue I'm presenting is the issue of the New Testament canon of Scripture, because there are other books that are still highly reverenced, but they were not accepted into the canon. One book called the Epistle of Barnabas, for instance. Now, that's highly referenced, a reverenced book, but in the council, there were some people that were like, I'm not totally sure that I want to go with the Epistle of Barnabas or not. So they just said, okay, when in doubt, throw it out.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm saying is the church is, the church had played everything else a very important role in collecting the documents that we call the Bible. And I think that's critical. I think that's a very important thing. It's not just a document that fell intact from the heavens. You know, some folks have this sort of totally mystical view of how the New Testament canon was formulated, and there's almost nothing mystical about it.
It's only because they're uninformed. It's only because they're uninformed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But do you agree? I mean,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah, because like I said, it took me 17 years, okay, to get my PhD. All right, because the depth of study that I had to do, okay, to connect this scarlet thread from Genesis through Revelation involved a whole lot of work. Okay, I had to study
I'm sure.
4 to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Okay, for 17 years straight. You know, and so
That's what's up, man.
You know,
good for you.
So a lot of the history and the way that you laid that out was impressive. You know, because I don't know if you have a PhD in biblical studies or anything like that, but if you don't, that was impressive. You know.
I don't, but I have been I suppose I'm a lay scholar with respect to church history, and my undergraduate degree was a Bachelor of Arts with a minor in comparative religion, and I taught apologetics at a couple churches that I worked at, and it's been that's been something that I'm an intellectual. Intellectual is that's not a you can be dumb and be an intellectual. Intellectual just refers to the process. The way that I process information. So you ask certain questions when you're growing up, when you're a kid, and it's like you're not getting satisfactory answers. You're coming of age, and it's like, I would ask people questions like, what is the Bible? Or like, okay, not what is the Bible, but, why am I supposed to do X, Y, and Z? Well, because the Bible says. Okay, but where did the Bible come from? Like, what? Tell me something more. And often is the case that an honest question is treated with a sort of like I'm being flippant. I was being flippant, or I was being irreverent. But really, I just wanted to understand. And
the reason why it was categorized that way, because they didn't know.
Exactly. And so I started to realize that was the case. That they just didn't have an answer. And they didn't want me to be asking questions that exposed that they didn't understand, that they didn't have anything more to tell me. And I'll tell you, a lot of men, I think, struggle with a lot of these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Because they have not been adequately, explained. They've not, in depth. There's a priority on a feel-good message rather than a message that's going to actually impart, a deep understanding of something that you didn't know before, something that's going to, teach you I don't know, something essential.
Yeah, you be able to utilize the knowledge and the wisdom in the Bible to be able to enhance your life. Okay, because it's full of knowledge and wisdom. Like I said earlier, every problem or situation that you can get into, okay, the solution is right there. Anything that you want to know about how to live your life, how to love your wife and raise your children is right there in that book.
Yeah.
Okay. And so one of the, just piggyback off what you were saying, one of the places where I got in trouble asking questions in church was I used to hear when I was a kid that you shouldn't read the book of Revelation, because you wouldn't understand it anyway. It's a mystery, and you can't figure it out or whatever. And I used to ask, why can't anybody understand the book of Revelation? And why shouldn't we read it? Why is it forbidden? It was almost made it seem like it was forbidden for, people to read the book of Revelation, So being a cantankerous, a little rebellious cat that I was, I started reading. I was like, oh, And of course, I was like, 9 and 10 years old at that time. But just reading it, I could see that there was some things that wasn't too hard for me to understand. You know, like when he was talking to the 7 churches of Asia Minor and whatnot, it was like, you know, and that's in the first, 2 or 3 chapters. And it was like, this is not hard to understand at all, you know?
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
One of the things that I'm going to do starting November 1st is I'm going to have a Kingdom Men's Bible study group. And I'm going to be doing initially doing the Bible study group on Zoom. And if people want to join in, and it's primarily for men, okay? If they want to join in on the Bible study group to be able to learn the Bible in a way that you can utilize the information to enhance your life, you know, where you can learn how to combine faith, family, and finances in order to be able to appropriate live your life, love your wife, and raise your children. That's the type of things that we are going to be talking about in the Bible study group. Plus, I'm going to show people the Bible, illustrate those stories in the Bible in a different way that they have never actually been taught before. Like the prodigal son, for example, is really not a story about the son, it's a story about the father, you know? And so people call it the prodigal son, but they don't understand that the son became prodigal because his father was prodigal, you know? And we're going to talk about things like the book of Esther, for example. We're going to find out the truth about the book of Esther and why it was such a controversy when people, you know, they were going through the process of canonizing this book and deciding whether or not it should be in the Bible, you know? And so we're going to look at that book and break that down and show you the truth about why there was so much controversy over that. So we're going to be doing different things like this in the Bible study group. So if anybody wants to join the Bible study group, and it's going to be based on a men's perspective, okay, they can just email me at Dr. Will at drwillenterprises.com. That's Dr. Will at drwillenterprises.com.
Absolutely, and what I'll do is I will put that in the description so folks can find you easily. I'll put a link to your website.